not Justin Bieber, but Liz Truss. Liz Truss is now singing No More Lockdown. It's straight into the hit parade at Big Sound 87, but can you dance to it? We'll ask Toby Young to demonstrate. Hey, Van, what about No More Lockdown, No More Digital ID? Ava Valadingerbroek is in studio with us. No More Lockdown, No More Adverse Effects. Natalie Winters is here. And, of course, the most important part of the show, GB News is the People's Channel, and in this age of experts, the people don't get enough of a look in, so do let me know what you think. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. A full hour of news and analysis coming your way after Polly Middlehurst with the latest headlines.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. The top story on GB News tonight. The hospital treating Archie Battersby says they'll begin to withdraw his life support treatment tomorrow morning. The 12-year-old has been in a coma since April after an accident at home, and he's been declared brainstem dead by doctors. 3 judges today refused to postpone the withdrawal of his treatment and also refused permission to appeal against their ruling. Archie's mother, Holly Dance, has called for changes to the law.
Archie's my child. It shouldn't be down to other people to decide where he takes his last breath and if he lives or dies. It's wrong. He's on 3 medications. He's absorbing feed. He's gained weight. That's on record. He's gained weight. You know, it's definitely not what they're putting over to the court, but the court aren't prepared to listen or allow us to have independent specialists in. There's not really much more I can do.
Archie Battersby's mum. Now, in other news today, a man who was arrested for carrying a crossbow in the grounds of Windsor Castle has been charged under the Treason Act. Police say Jaswant Singh Chail from Southampton is accused of intending to injure or alarm the Queen. The 20-year-old was intercepted on Christmas Day last year. He'll appear in court later this month. BP has reported a profit of nearly £7 billion for the second quarter, the biggest in 14 years. That's as UK households are hit by rising oil and gas prices, with inflation at its highest in 40 years. A consultancy firm has warned energy bills could reach more than £3,600 for each household this winter. British Airways has suspended the sale of short-haul flights from Heathrow for at least the next week, affecting domestic and European flights. BA says the move is in response to Heathrow's request to limit new bookings. Last month, the airport announced a daily limit of 100,000 passengers to go through the airport. That's until mid-September. Police have issued an arrest warrant for the older brother of the Manchester Arena bomber. Ismail Abedi, who fled the UK last summer, failed to attend the public inquiry into the 2017 attack at Manchester Magistrates Court today. Last month, he also failed to comply with the inquiry, and he faces a jail term of up to 51 weeks if he's captured or if he hands himself in. Now, there was a royal treat at the Commonwealth Games today as Princess Charlotte joined her parents in Birmingham. 7-year-old Charlotte accompanied the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge to learn all about preparing the next generation of sportsmen and women for future events. England are currently second in the medals table on day 5 with 27 gold and 27 silver medals. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. We have a little bit of breaking news ourselves. As you know, we've been covering the goings-on in Oldham, where quite disgracefully, Oldham Council, after certain residents came to a council meeting and complained about Oldham declining to open up an inquiry into the rape gangs operating with impunity in Oldham, they then joined up with Greater Manchester Police and issued ASBOs. They issued an ASBO to the mother of the 12-year-old girl who was taken in the very police station and gang raped by at least 8 men continuously in the course of that night. They gave the mother of that girl an ASBO. Well, they've now backed down these awful, contemptible third-rate councillors, and they are going to they are going to face a government inquiry into what they call CSE. These acronyms don't actually help. It's gang rape. Gang rape. Grooming gangs is a euphemism. CSE, child sexual exploitation, is a euphemism. If you knew what happened to Samantha, that poor 12-year-old girl, you wouldn't use these euphemisms. But anyway, there's now going to be a government inquiry into that. Some baroness will sit on it and report back in 3 or 4 years, and nothing will be done. Ladies and gentlemen, the purported deputy leader of the free world.
I know that while we send our prayers and our love, we also, with each day, renew our commitment to the urgency of now and the ability that we have collectively, all of us in it together, to do something about it. May God bless you, and may God bless America. Thank you all.
With each day, we renew our commitment to the urgency of now and the ability that we have collectively to do something about it, unquote. Thank you, Madam Harris, for having the guts to say what needs to be said. It's not enough to commit yourself to doing something about the urgency of now. You also have to recommit yourself to doing something about the urgency of now each and every day. Gee, I can hear you saying, that sounds like an awful lot of work. No, don't worry about it. You'd be surprised how easy it is. The great thing about recommitting yourself to doing something about the urgency of now is that it involves doing absolutely nothing at all. Martin Luther King used to call it the fierce urgency of now, but they've taken all the fierceness out of it, and it's now the easy listening urgency of now. The urgency of now can put me to sleep in 15 seconds. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm looking for in a political leader in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. The ability to play Mad Libs with random sonorous phrases, give them a pancake flip and see what crazy order they come down in. You can knock it, but with Joe Biden contracting a new dose of the COVID every 10 days, sooner than you think, this person is going to be getting a job promotion. Can you guess what Kamala Harris was talking about? Racism, transgender bathrooms, more money for Ukraine? No, it was. Oh, look at this. Quote, remarks by Vice President Harris on climate resilience. That's the fantastic thing about renewing your commitment every day to doing something about the urgency of now. You can apply it to anything. This week's Omicron subvariant, electric cars, pregnant men, and it works just as well. Meanwhile, down under, I don't know how Lydia Thorpe, the first Aboriginal senator from Victoria to sit in the Australian Parliament, I don't know how Lydia Thorpe feels about renewing her commitment to the urgency of now, but she has no desire to renew her commitment to the majesty of the Crown. Here she is taking her oath of allegiance.
Senator Thorpe, you are required to recite the oath as printed on the card, so please recite the oath.
I, Lydia Thorpe, do solemnly and sincerely affirm and declare that I will be faithful and bear...
So that's the wrong one. That's the wrong clip we played. Fantastic. It's going to be one of those nights. In fact, what the senator from Victoria said was, she said, I bear true allegiance to the colonising Her Majesty Queen II. We're all happy to indulge a little lame-o, tedious, boorish Republican showboating, but as any reasonably well-informed Irish nationalist could tell you, in this centenary year of the Irish Free State, the one bedrock bottom-line deal-breaker is the oath of allegiance. So the president of the Australian Senate had to make Lydia Thorpe try again, and this time pledge to bear allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen without adding the bit about what a colonizer the Queen is. Her colonizing Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, that's gone now. The only colonizer in Australia and the Pacific right now is Chairman Xi and his Chinese Politburo. Do Senator Thorpe and her party, the Australian Greens, object to that ongoing colonization right now? No, they don't. The senator began by describing herself as I, Sovereign Lydia Thorpe. And I have a fair bit of sympathy for the notion of the sovereign individual, but not from these statist greenies. Lydia Thorpe fully supported the lockdown in Victoria, which was the most draconian lockdown anywhere in Her colonizing Majesty's dominion. So Lydia Thorpe may be, quote, sovereign, but she doesn't think you're sovereign enough to decide when you want to leave your flat and take a stroll in the park en route to having a cuppa with Granny. These are, for the most part, the only two kinds of politicians there are. Bland blatherers like Kamala or piffling provocateurs like Lydia. With politics, I'd occasionally like a little bit of plain-spoken reality. You know the migrant tide washing up on England's southern shore every day? This is how the Aussies deal with it. Look at this. No way you will not make Australia home. If you get on a boat without a visa, you will not end up in Australia. Any vessel seeking to illegally enter Australia will be intercepted and safely removed beyond Australian waters. The rules apply to everyone: families, children, unaccompanied children, educated and skilled. No matter who you are or where you are from, you will not make Australia home. Think again before you waste your money. People smugglers are lying. And they mean it. They mean it. You can't get into Australia if you try going there in the kind of boats that wash up on our southern shore every day. Hundreds and hundreds of people. Wouldn't you like to see a UK version of that poster? Way to go! You're 99.99% certain of making the United Kingdom your home. If you get on a boat without a visa, you will end up at a Premier Inn or travel lodge in southern England. Any vessel seeking to illegally enter the United Kingdom will be intercepted and safely ushered to shore by the Royal Navy, the UK Border Force and the Royal National Lifeboat Institute for express check-in services. The rules apply to everyone. Young Sudanese men, young Somali men, young Afghan men, young Libyan men and young men generally. We're not sure if the rules apply to women and children, as we never see any. No matter who you are or where you are from, you are certain to make the UK your home. So the cash outlay is well worth it. People smugglers are Europe's last booming business, and Her Majesty's government in London, unlike Her Majesty's government in Canberra, are proud to be the human traffickers' trusted partners. In between the urgency of now and the third-rate dinner theatre of Green senators, would you like a bit more reality in your politics? Well, there are signs of butchness from Liz Truss. For example, lockdowns. The cost of living is the cost of lockdown. If you're wondering why your life is crap, why your heating bills are through the roof, why inflation is a thing for the first time in 4 decades, why your luggage from a week in Spain is still piled up with 87,000 other suitcases at sub-basement level D in car park 37 at Heathrow, and it's been 12 days now. Well, you can thank the geniuses who gave us lockdown. Lots of people are still hot for lockdown, men of influence, such as Jeremy Vine and Piers Morgan. Every time a new sub-sub variant starts swirling around, causing Jeremy a mild tickle in the back of his throat, he starts panting for lockdown and munching his pillow. But to repeat, the cost of living is the cost of lockdown. So Liz Truss, next month's Prime Minister, was asked last night if she would agree to another lockdown. And she answered, and I want to make sure this response I get absolutely correct. Liz Truss asked if she would support another lockdown, said, quote, no, unquote. How about that? She's been doing quite a lot of this lately. The Spectator asked the candidates where they stood on a second referendum in Scotland. First up was Rishi.
Are there any circumstances in which you would agree to a second Scottish independence referendum?
Well, this process is now playing out in the courts, and the Supreme Court will make a decision. I think I hope that they will decide that it's rightly. For the Constitution, it sets out how that's meant to work. So that court process will play out. My general view on the matter is I care very deeply about the union.
Oh, my God. On and on for another 10 minutes of waffle, pathetic tap dancing around the room. Total rubbish, even by Rishi standards. By comparison, here's Liz Truss.
Are there any circumstances in which you would agree to a second Scottish independence referendum?
No.
None at all.
What a great answer. Let me know your take. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But what's going on here? Toby Young is the founder of the Free Speech Union and of the Daily Sceptic, both fine institutions. Toby, is Liz Truss a Margaret Thatcher for our times?
Well, I think she's doing a pretty good impression of one at the moment, and she'll certainly get my vote as a Conservative Party member. I can understand people's cynicism about her supposedly ruling out another lockdown. I mean, if someone had asked Boris Johnson during the 2019 leadership campaign if there's an outbreak, a global outbreak of a flu-like virus which poses no real threat to those under 65 with no underlying health conditions, with one or two exceptions, would you shut down schools, lock everyone in their homes, mothball the economy, effectively bankrupt the country? I expect he'd say, no, I won't. And yet he did. So I don't think we can take this to the bank. And, it's not exactly a manifesto pledge. It's a slightly grey area. I mean, who's she making that promise to? The Conservative Party membership, which is slightly under 200,000 people, so 0.3% of the population. Can you hold a politician to a promise to such a tiny fraction of the population? But having said all that, I've been campaigning against the lockdown policy now for the best part of 2.5 years. I think it was the biggest policy error ever committed in the history of the world, a catastrophic error. And for a major politician, probably our next Prime Minister, to rule out another lockdown is a massive win. And, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think that I think it's sad that she's taken 2.5 years to catch up with you, and I think at least 2 years to catch up with dear old Van Morrison, who was, who was quite right about this. But she's up against a guy who can't even say anything like that. You may be right. Liz Truss may something, the monkeypox will come along in some new variant, and Liz Truss might reverse it. But if she's up against a guy who can't even say that now, that's all she has to be, isn't it, to win?
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like she will win. And I think she has fought a better campaign than him, and she has been more direct, and I think people do have a clearer sense of what they're going to get with her than they do with Rishi. She seems less like a creature of the kind of international global elite than him. She said she's going to pause net zero, which is more than he said, and that's very welcome, and it'd be even better if she said she was going to scrap the target altogether. But the fact that she says she's going to pause it and look again at it and reevaluate it and do it in a more proportionate way, that's, we should welcome that too. And she's been reasonably robust about free speech. We know that when she was an equalities minister, she paused self-ID, the reform of the Gender Recognition Act. So, she does walk the walk as well as talk the talk on those sorts of issues. I'm hoping that even though Nadine Dorries is on Team Liz, that she will scrap the worst aspects of the online safety bill, Nadine's baby. Nadine says she won't, but I'm not sure. I think we have to take that with a pinch of salt. Nadine hopes she won't, but I think she probably will. So I think that's another reason to support her. I mean, for my three big issues are net zero, lockdowns, and woke gobbledygook of all kinds. And on all three things, she seems to be much sounder than Rishi and sounder than Boris.
Well, Rishi does come over just as a parody of the disconnected globalist who, you know, I don't want to go on about his green card and all the rest of it, but you do get the feeling that he can just move on and settle anywhere on the planet, and he's completely disconnected from how real people live their lives. But what about, you know, you didn't mention it as one of your 3 issues, but certainly it would come as one of most Tory voters' issues. This business of the migrants arriving. Are we just supposed to accept now that certain absolutely primal things are actually beyond the capacity of the government to do anything about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what her position is on that. I'm sure it has come up in the hustings and will come up again. But, you know, I would imagine that she's more likely to stick to the policy of deporting illegal migrants to Rwanda than Rishi would. You know, you get the impression that she'd be slightly more robust. I mean, maybe not as robust as we'd like, but slightly more robust than Rishi on that policy.
Well, I sort of put lockdown in that category because I think it's one of these things where you're up against all the clever people, all the experts. All the experts agreed that you were actually one of the first people very early on in this to say, no, this is going to be terrible. But basically everyone said, oh, well, look at these guys with knighthoods who are flanking Boris every day and saying, oh, we just need to lock down for another 2 weeks, 7 weeks, year and a half, and everything's going to be fine and dandy. I mean, this is another one of these issues where the elites have all the answers and the rest of us are just supposed to accept their expertise.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in favour of Liz is that she does acknowledge that, you know, not everything is rosy in the garden. The country's in a mess. Inflation is the highest it's been for 40 years. We have, you know, a cost of living crisis. People can't afford to pay their energy bills. I think she recognises that, you know, we are on the brink of a major crisis and we need to try something new. We can no longer trust the old solutions. We can't trust the traditional elites to get these sorts of calls right because they've got them so wrong over the last 2.5 years. And I think when she comes out and says something like, I'm ruling out locking down again, you know, even if you don't completely believe her, I think it's important that opponents of the lockdown, people who've been campaigning against lockdowns all this time, should support her. I mean, politicians often say to me, you know, I get into a lot of trouble when I take up a contentious position like that. I mean, and she's been condemned by all the usual suspects, so she's got to get some reward. If people like us don't come out and support her when she says something like that, she's not going to say something like that again.
You wrote a rather sad column saying, oh, we blew it, we failed. I've been opposed to lockdown for years, but I failed to convince a majority of my fellow Britons to go along with it. We lost the argument. I don't think that actually is the case. I think the Liz Truss thing is where the voter base are. So it may have taken longer than you expected, but I think ultimately no one thinks lockdown is great if you want more inflation, if you want more dysfunction at Heathrow and the rest of the travel network, but no, and if you want more damage, mental health damage to our kids and all the rest of it. But I don't think anyone seriously would jump for lockdown, other than a few of these media buffoons.
Well, I hope not. Maybe I conceded defeat a little too early, and actually, the anti-lockdowners have gone on to win the argument. But I think I'm hoping, you know, that this is actually a preview of what will be a commitment she'll make during a general election campaign at the next general election, and that'll be clear blue water between her and Keir Starmer, who was always for, you know, faster,
more lockdown,
harder, more lockdowns.
You're very clever to do this head-faking thing where you say, oh, I think we may have lost the argument. That's what Nigel did on Brexit night. He came on at 10 o'clock and said, I think we might have come up a little short. So I thought, screw this, I'm going to bed. I woke up at 4:15 in the morning to an ashen-faced David Dimble. So you're trying the same thing. Thank you very much, Toby Young. Coming up, our pal Ava Vlaardingerbroek is back to talk about the march of the Dutch farmers and digital identity and also all kinds of other stuff. And Natalie Winters is here, so don't touch that dial. We shall return imminently.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hey, welcome back. GB News is the People's Channel, so let's channel what the people are saying on Liz Truss's definitive answer. Commitment never to lock us down ever again. Sir Percival Ware Armitage. Is this a real name, or is... I didn't know we had guys called Sir Percival Ware Armitage around in the new, exciting, vibrant Britain. But Sir Percival says... he doesn't believe Liz Truss because she hasn't pledged to keep the UK out of the World Health Organization pandemic treaty. That's a good one. She likes saying no, so just keep asking her stuff and she'll keep saying no to it. But that's a good one. Catherine says it's not just lockdowns, but opposing the World Health Organization treaty. Liz, are you listening? Liz is going to be on with the great Alistair Stewart next Wednesday. Big special People's Forum with Liz Truss, and Alistair is the perfect guy to do it. So these are good questions. Why don't you pull us out of the World Health Organization treaty? That's a good one. Not controlling our freedoms or preventing self-determination, no manipulation of behavior or introduction of dehumanizing measures. Hold that thought. Lois Moole says it just keeps spilling out. But in all honesty, how is it possible to make that promise? Or maybe she'll be long gone, or she knows there won't be another pandemic in the next 18 months. That's a good one. They all got the memo off of Klaus Schwab's fax machine this morning. We have decided to save the new pandemic until at least 2025. That's the word from Klaus Schwab. Anthea says, I'd like to believe Truss, but I generally find now that the proof needs to be in the pudding, where UK politics, they don't want you eating pudding. This is the Bill Gates diet. There's not going to be anything in the pudding except Bill Gates's cockroaches from the Bill Gates cockroach farm. That's all you're going to find. There's not going to be proof in the pudding. It's just going to be Bill Gates cockroaches in the pudding. The Windows 98 of dessert, Bill Gates pudding. Okay, somewhere deep within Nadine Dorris's Department of, what's it called? Digital Media, Culture, Sport, Artichokes, Snoods, Pink Unicorns, Be-Penised Women and Grade 1 Ha-Has, there is a Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Digital Infrastructure. Ooh, is that just something harmless to do with bringing broadband to outlying parts of Rockall? Or is it about digitising you and your life. Last week, Greece started rolling out digital ID cards because nothing says state-of-the-art efficient central government like Greece. Pakistan, another byword for government integrity, has also begun ushering in digital ID in order to vote, in order to go to school, open a bank account, apply for a job. If only Osama bin Laden, when he was living openly in Abbottabad with the connivance of Pakistani generals, had had a digital ID, it would have been so much easier for the Yanks to take him. Oh, no, wait. I think being a hardcore jihadist gets you an exemption from the digital ID program in Pakistan. Okay, Greece, Pakistan. In America, something called Ant Group, a platform for Chinese social credit scores and vaccine mandates, has signed up various big shot Washington lobbyists with connections to President Obama, Senator Mitt Romney, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So this thing is happening. And happening fast. Greece, Pakistan, the United States. With me now is Ava Valadingerbroek. And Ava, there are signs that this is happening in your country too.
Absolutely. Well, as we've talked about often before, the digital identity is not just a passport that you will have on your iPhone in a digital form. It entails just about everything the government would like to know about you. And yesterday in the Dutch media, we saw a perfect example of what it could entail in the near future. We had the CEO of one of the largest Dutch banks say, why don't we start with a personal carbon credit?
Oh.
A carbon wallet, she called it, actually. Yeah. So right in line with the plans that the World Economic Forum people have for us. And she said it in a way that was particularly funny. She said, well, if everyone gets an individual personal carbon credit, why don't we make it so that rich people who, for example, want to go on holiday a little too often can buy personal carbon credit from other people who, for example, can't afford buying plane tickets or eating meat too often. So we can that way swap it out.
Oh, so if Bill Gates or Leonardo DiCaprio's carbon footprint is getting a bit too big, then some peasant living in his hovel up country somewhere can sell his, and he can't afford to go to Saint-Tropez, but he'll be able to sell his carbon allowance to Leonardo DiCaprio so Leonardo can park his yacht in Saint-Tropez for a couple of extra days.
Exactly right. That's it. So what will happen is the rich will get richer, the poor will get poorer, and they're saying it openly as if it's not a controversial thing at all. It's neo-feudalism. That's what it is. And they don't mind. You know, it's just, yeah, okay. Then they said, well, it's just a thought experiment, because obviously a lot of people were kind of upset about this communist ideal that they just presented to the people on TV as a good idea. So they said, oh no, it's a thought experiment. Well, we've heard that before.
Yeah, we've had too many thought, but it was interesting to see. As you were talking, we saw that banker. She was being interviewed on a Dutch radio show, and she got a little too relaxed, and actually, as they say in America, said the quiet part out loud. You're not actually meant to. You're not actually meant. There she is. She's chatting in the radio studio, and she just gets a little carried away. And we went to her now. Now you know, there's a bank vice president in Canada. I think it was the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, which is one of the biggest banks in Canada, said pretty much the same thing and sold it on. This is going to be so convenient because all your information will be centrally located. So we can save the planet. We're just going to keep track of how many miles you do in your car, whether you've taken one too many vacations in the Greek islands, if you're eating too many cheeseburgers. It'll all be centrally located, and that will make it all the more convenient for you.
Yeah, and they're being honest, so they're exposing their true agenda, because obviously the best way to get to a modern person's heart is to say that it's convenient for them. So yes, you won't have to carry all your different papers and your passports, but the downside of it is, and I hope that people will start to see this, that the government can shut you down. So you know, if you want to buy a burger, red screen, no, Mark, not for you. That flight, not for you. Oh, but you can just buy it if you have enough money, right? So they're being very open and honest to what their goal is here. So we should take their words seriously and say, hell no. And instead, this woman going off on radio and saying exactly what she thinks. Now, we had backlash, right? So people were upset about it, but she's invited on national television tonight. So in an hour, she will be sitting there talking about this great thought experiment. And then suddenly it's part of the debate. And it's accepted. Whereas I would say we should cancel these communists immediately and say, get the hell out of my private life. I'm not having you track me and decide what I eat and where I go.
Yeah, we said when we were talking yesterday, I said, you know, people say these are conspiracy theories, but they're not. These guys are saying it. This lady said it openly on the radio into a microphone, and she's a powerful person in a good position to make it happen. The difference isn't. It seems to be that half the country think these are benign experts who have our best interests at heart.
Exactly. And like we talked about before, they'll have the pretty words to cover it up. They'll say it's convenient for you. And that way, little by little, they take your rights away. And yeah, she definitely is serious. She has a position. She's a CEO of a bank, and this bank is already doing this. They are already tracking your carbon emission. Why would they do that if they don't want to use it for something? So the only thing that we need to do is take the facts that are laid out in front of us and draw the conclusion that these people don't have our best interest at heart. That's it.
No, you make a very good point there. The information is the product that they sell each other back and forth. They want to know what websites you go on. They want to know what your credit card is spending money on. And the idea that they're just collecting all this information for benign reasons because, you know, they know you like buying green sweaters, so they want to be able to send you information about forthcoming green. It's not for that at all. This is an apparatus of control they're setting up.
It's totalitarianism to the T. The idea that the state knows everything about you at any second of the day and therefore has all the power and control over your life. They can shut you down. If everything is centralized on your phone, and this, again, not a conspiracy theory, the European Commission has put this forward. It's called the European Digital Identity Project. This is going to be rolled out in my country, my lovely pilot country for the World Economic Forum, the Netherlands, in October, I believe.
Yeah.
It's all fun and games until you get your red screen.
Yeah, you know, I don't think Chad is yet part of the Digital Identity Project, or Waziristan. Waziristan, if you don't want to be part of the Digital Identity Project and you've got a second cousin in Waziristan, see if he can get you a backup passport, because that's where they're going to be living free.
If you can still fly, let's go now.
Yeah. Thank you, Amy. It's always good to see you, especially right in the heart of the metropolis like this. Increasingly on this program, we tackle subjects that the losers at Full Fact cast off as misinformation, only then to be vindicated by officialdom when they get round to it later. A new study from the University of Illinois, that's not some made-up diploma mill where you can download your diploma for 17 shillings and threepence, but the university finds that 40% of women who've gotten the COVID vaccines, it's actually 40.2% of women have reported changes in their menstrual cycle. That sounds like the sort of thing maybe we ought to be a little bit concerned about because it has implications for fertility and all kinds of other things. Well, Natalie Winters has been looking into it. She's the Chief Investigative Supremo with the National Pulse, and she joins me now. Natalie, when people talk about adverse effects, 40-point-something% actually sounds like quite a high rate of adverse effects.
The figures are pretty staggering, and as you pointed out, this isn't just some random study from an institution that doesn't have any substance or accreditation behind it. Believe it or not, this study was actually funded by the U.S. National Institutes of Health. And what's also really interesting about this study is that it was a sample size of over 35,000 participants, which they asked them how receiving a COVID-19 vaccine impacted their menstrual cycles. And if you go through the data, you can see that most of the people received the Pfizer vaccine, followed in suit by the Moderna vaccine. But what really I think is so eye-catching about this study is not just the 40.2%, but how this story, really the impacts that COVID-19 vaccines have had, particularly on young women in their menstrual cycles, how the media refuses to report on it. And of course, it's no surprise. I'd point people to the fact that one of the board of directors at Pfizer, who also happens to be a top investor at the company, is also the former CEO and now a chairman at Reuters. Believe it or not, you probably do believe it, Reuters has not covered this study yet, but they have published article after article dismissing any fears or concerns over COVID-19 vaccines and menstrual cycles.
I'm just doing some rough math here. You know, there's 300 million Americans. That means 150 million women. If you knock off the young uns and the old uns, and let's say 100 million, it's just off the top of my head. But that means there would be like over 40 million women who've had their menstrual cycles affected by the COVID vaccine. That's the sort of thing that you think would be very disquieting for large numbers of people, don't you?
You would think, and of course, you know, when you're talking about menstrual cycles, you're talking about fertility, which is, of course, on the forefront, I would say, in terms of concerns in young women's minds. And remember, it was really young women my age, college students, who were forced to get COVID-19 vaccines to return to school, to be able to really do anything that people, you know, in that age group would normally do. So it's really, really interesting that these people have been so heavily impacted. And there was another study a few months back, also funded by the National Institutes of Health, that also found that these COVID-19 vaccines were lengthening the cycles of young girls in particular. So again, while it's kind of easy to get bogged down in the data points and reading these studies, there's a lot of data, a lot of numbers. The point is that these COVID-19 vaccines are clearly and demonstrably having an impact on really, I would say, the most important thing when it comes to young women's fertility. And the media refuses to report on it, and the pharmaceutical companies are just trying to do their best to cover it up.
Well, there was a case in New York. You mentioned some of the things that people, jobs that, and activities that people had to get the jabs for. In New York, a restaurant required its workers to get vaccinated, and a waitress resisted because at the time she was trying to get pregnant. And she was generally portrayed in the press as someone who was kooky and superstitious. But it's not superstitious thinking that the vaccines can affect your ability to get pregnant. They can affect your fertility more generally. When you have a survey showing that over 40% of women who take the vaccines have changes to their menstruation patterns.
Well, I think that this study is just the latest piece of evidence that shows that people who had hesitations about getting a COVID-19 vaccine were totally correct. And I think it also goes to the central question of these vaccine mandates and mask mandates, really any mandate we've seen come from these public health officials. If these measures were really supposed to protect us, why do they have to force us into doing it? And I even think it dovetails with what you were talking about in the previous segment. Why do they have to euphemize social credit scores and digital ID systems? Because at the end of the day, the benefits of these, whether it's vaccine mandates, mask mandates, digital ID, and digital passports, there actually are no benefits to common people. The only people who benefit from them are the elites who are putting them in place. So that's why they have to lie. And that's why they have an army, really a brigade of fact checkers and establishment media outlets to enforce their narrative.
No, you're quite right about that. But all the sensible people, Natalie, think it's quite natural to let elderly men like Dr. Fauci and middle-aged billionaires like Bill Gates control the menstrual cycles of the planet's women. I haven't even read that in the craziest bit of dystopian science fiction. Thank you very much, Natalie. Coming up, you can ask me anything in Stump the Stein. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. Plus, Taiwan, China, threatening to shoot Nancy Pelosi out of the sky if she sets foot in Taiwan. That's coming up next with Alexandra Marshall here on The Mark Steyn Show. Stay tuned.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
In Peking, Chairman Xi wants Taiwan back in the fold, just like Hong Kong is, so he doesn't like American big shots visiting there, as if Taiwan is just another foreign country other foreign countries can have foreign relations with. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, is the most senior American politician to visit Taiwan in a quarter century. When Peking heard about it, they threatened to shoot her plane out of the sky. That has not happened. That's Mrs. Pelosi coming down the airplane steps. Almost, you know, she's an authentic American. She's coming down the airplane steps as woozily and unsteadily as Joe Biden does. But the Chinese Air Force has been buzzing the island. With me now is Alexandra Marshall from The Spectator, Down Under. Alexandra, what do you make of this threat to shoot Nancy Pelosi out of the sky?
Well, things are certainly hotting up in my part of the world down here in the Pacific. But I think of Nancy Pelosi as sort of like the canary that was sent in to test China to see what the Pacific is really like. This kind of stunt doesn't happen by accident. You know, Nancy Pelosi didn't just decide one morning to go and fly into Taiwan. A lot of people behind the scenes had to approve this kind of event that could trigger a global conflict if you're not very careful. And what America proved is that China is basically saber-rattling. It's playing domestic politics with Taiwan. It's obviously not prepared for a global conflict. It doesn't want to get involved. And part of the reason it closed its airspace was to make sure that there were no accidents happening around this incident. So no, they were never going to blow Nancy Pelosi's plane out of the sky. But America was sending a pretty clear message to China that Taiwan is a protected entity. It was confirmation that regardless of whatever their policy has been in the past, Taiwan is now not up for grabs in the great reunification project that Xi Jinping has been going on about. And one thing I'd like to make very clear, which Chinese media has been lying about, is that if anything happens to Taiwan, it has absolutely nothing to do with America or Australia or anybody else. They have made it their pledge that for the 100th anniversary, they are going to take Taiwan one way or another.
Yeah, no, that's true. But if you say that America's sending Nancy Pelosi as the canary in the Taiwanese coal mine, it's slightly odd then, isn't it, for John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, basically to say, oh, no, we don't think Taiwan is an independent country or anything like that. At the same time, they backed away from the firmness that Joe Biden, back when he had his marbles, used to talk about Taiwan with.
Well, that's kind of like Xi Jinping saying he's going to protect Hong Kong's political system, which, of course, he had no intention of doing so. There's a lot of things being said that people don't really mean. It's all it's sort of this mind game that goes on with China and America that's happening. But the one thing that is not up for grabs is the fact that Pelosi landed in Taiwan, and Biden has said, I think 3 times now, that America will defend Taiwan, and Japan has said that Taiwan is the red line in the sand there. And that's because over 60% of all of our trade in the Pacific has to go past Taiwan. So no one is going to let China have that. And I think this was a means of reinforcing that status that Taiwan has now.
What do you think, though, of the broader situation here? From the point of view of the United States, everything pretty much in every American's home is made in China. Doesn't matter whether you're talking about your crappy $2 T-shirts, your socks, your underwear, your aspirins, your laptops, the fancy chips that go in your motor cars. Everything is made in China. By policy, essentially by a decision of the American Chamber of Commerce backed by the government. Everything has been outsourced to a nation that threatens to blow the 3rd most senior political figure in the United States government out of the sky. There's a bit of a contradiction there, isn't there, Alexandra?
Yes, well, China is currently experiencing a bit of an economic crisis of its own. And as America starts to withdraw its business from China, it is struggling with the middle class losing its work in the factories. And it's a problem for China as well. And one of the reasons that China hasn't actually done anything yet is because it's got 1.4 billion mouths to feed. And while a lot of people is advantageous for a fast war, it's absolutely atrocious for a long war, because you start to turn inwards, and as soon as supply lines get cut, the large nations become vulnerable. So yes, it's a problem for China, whether or not they take Taiwan as a risk. But I will say one thing, this is the sort of logic we saw at the beginning of the First World War, where people thought that because the world was organized a certain way and trade routes were dependent on certain people, that the world would never go to war because it would be too costly. And we worked out after 2 world wars that is simply not the case. If dictators do their thing, then the world restructures itself, and suddenly America might be making things, or India might be making things instead of China. Things can change, and it's not a guarantee for peace.
Your comparison with 1914 is well put there, Alexandra. It's odd to me, though, that the Politburo is threatening to turn Nancy Pelosi into the poor old Archduke in Sarajevo. We will see how this one plays out, and it's going to keep going. Yeah.
The worst part about it is Nancy Pelosi actually walks away from this looking good, which is a shame for the whole world.
Yeah, no, that's true. I wish it had been the poor old Archduke, poor fellow. Things would be a little different today. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Let's stump it out. What do we got here? John Rankin says, where have the 10 million Ukrainian refugees gone? Interesting question. We've actually employed them as guest presenters to get us through the dog days of August. So you won't want to miss the Olga and Dmitry show, which will be starting on GB News tomorrow evening at this time. Kerry says, can I request the Jabba 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 song, please? That's what we do when we're talking about the monkeypox, and you know how it goes. So all together now. Jabba 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 Jabba, said the monkey to the chimp.
Dabba 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 dabba, said the chimpy to the monk. Dabba 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 dabba, said the monkey to the chimp.
Yeah, we're gonna make that song a hit if it kills us. That'll do it. Dan Wootton is here to titillate your Tuesday. What do you got, Dan?
Oh, Mark Steyn, you are already a hit. You know that. My goodness, absolutely amazing ratings at the moment, Mark. But look, I was actually really intrigued by your conversation with Toby earlier in the show, because I'm with him. I am with him. I am embracing this declaration from Liz Truss. And what's been fascinating, Mark, is to see the usual suspects, the establishment, the mainstream media round on her today and say this was an irresponsible declaration to say she will never lock down the country again. Well, I would actually say it would be irresponsible to say that she would lock down the country again. So look, I know you're not entirely there yet, but for me, at least this is now on the record. It is a declaration on camera, and if she goes back on it, we can hold her to account.
No, I'm with you on that. I was with Van Morrison when he did his No More Lockdown song, and I am glad. And he suffered terribly for it. So it's great to see politicians belatedly singing along with Van. Don't miss it. It's the best 2 hours in late night telly. It's all coming up with Dan after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Staying largely cloudy over the next 24 hours, breezy as well, but that breeze coming from the southwest will continue to bring some warmth and humidity with it. Low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK at the moment. That's brought some rain and a lot of cloud in from the Atlantic during the last 24 hours. And over the next 24 hours, we'll continue to see largely cloudy skies and some rain, mostly northern and western England overnight, as well as parts of Wales, especially over the hills and coasts. Showers or even longer spells of rain pushing into the northwest of Scotland, Northern Ireland, spreading into other parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. A lot of cloud overnight and a continued breeze, so a mild, if rather muggy night to come, 15 to 18 Celsius fairly widely. Then a gloomy start to the day, especially for parts of Wales and the southwest. Early rain here clears into central England, turns to showers, and then skies brightening. It stays dry through the day in the far southeast. Sunshine reappears for the southern half of the UK, but scattered showers continue for Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. A cooler feel in the north, but still very warm in the southeast, 27 to 28 Celsius. Then we keep the clear skies in the south overnight, but further showers will affect North Wales, Northern England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, perhaps even some more prolonged rain at times for the west of Scotland, that moving eastwards through the early hours of Thursday. And it's another mild night, but not quite as warm. Temperatures in Scotland and Northern Ireland at around 12 Celsius, England and Wales more like 14 to 16 degrees. And plenty of sunshine for much of England and Wales first thing Thursday. A scattering of showers for Northern England, parts of North and West Wales. More especially Scotland and Northern Ireland will see some showers at times, interspersed by brighter spells. And a similar picture on Friday, showers in the north, brighter in the south, turning cooler across the board.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital.